Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a theory from our source materials that completely flips the script on type 1 diabetes. So get ready to see this condition in a way you probably never have before. All right, let's just jump right in with the big question that frames this whole discussion. We've all been taught to think of type 1 diabetes as a sugar problem, right? But what if that's not the cause? What if it's just a symptom? What if the real root of the issue is a total collapse of the body's internal heat, a state of, well, profound cold? So here's how we're going to break this down today. We'll start with this core idea of a cold crisis. Then we'll look at the body's two competing energy systems. And from there, we'll trace the chain of events that, according to this framework, leads to what we know as type 1 diabetes. Okay, section 1. Let's get into the most radical idea from our sources, that true type 1 diabetes isn't really about sugar at all. It's about temperature. It's a crisis of cold. I mean, this quote just turns everything upside down, doesn't it? Instead of thinking about the body being overwhelmed by too much sugar, this theory frames it as a body that's literally starving for fuel. It's not overheating, it's freezing from the inside out because its furnace is failing. And at the very heart of this theory is a concept called marrow failure. Now, we're not just talking about blood cells here. In this model, the bone marrow system is the body's furnace. It's the core engine that generates our heat. So when that furnace begins to fail, the entire body loses its main source of warmth, and that's what triggers this whole cascade of problems. So how could the body's furnace fail so dramatically? To get that, we have to look at how it's powered. The sources describe the body not as one single machine, but almost like a battlefield between two competing energy systems. And this slide really lays out that core conflict. You've got the brain system on one side, it's cool, it's the command center, and it runs on the quick, easy energy from sugar. Then you have the bone marrow system. It's hot, it's about raw physical power, and it's fueled by the slow, intense burn of fat and protein. You know, when you're healthy, these two are in balance. But this theory says that when one of them is starved of its proper fuel, the whole system just collapses. So how does this delicate balance tip over into a full-blown crisis? Well, according to our sources, this whole dangerous chain reaction doesn't start with sugar. It doesn't even start with the pancreas. It begins with one single critical failure in our diet. You can see the dominoes fall right here. It all kicks off with a lack of fat in the diet. That's the main fuel for the body's furnace. So out of sheer desperation, the body starts burning protein for heat instead. But here's the problem. Protein is what the marrow itself is built from. So the furnace literally starts consuming its own structure just to keep a flicker of a flame going. This starves the marrow, its power tanks, and the body's core temperature drops, dangerously low. And this quote, it just nails it. This is that critical moment. It's the point of no return where the body's survival strategy goes terribly, terribly wrong. It's a last-ditch effort that, if it keeps going, leads to the body dismantling the very system that's supposed to generate its life force. Okay, so this leads us to one of the biggest puzzles in type 1 diabetes, sugar in the urine. I mean, why would a body that is literally starving for any kind of energy just throw away perfectly good sugar? Well, this framework has a surprisingly logical answer. And here it is. This is the key insight. Sugar isn't just fuel for the brain, it's also the body's main coolant. Think about it. When your internal furnace has failed and your body is freezing, what's the absolute last thing you need? More coolant. So, getting rid of sugar isn't a mistake. It's a deliberate, logical command to ditch a substance that would only make a critical cold crisis even worse. What's really fascinating is that the sources argue what we diagnose as diabetes is actually just the third and final stage of this whole process. It starts way before any sugar shows up. First, the body tries to preserve heat by dumping water and salt. Then, without salt, it can't hold on to water, so it gets dehydrated. And only at the very end, when things are dire and the body is cold, does it finally start getting rid of that now useless sugar. So, If this whole way of looking at the body is flipped, it stands to reason that our normal way of testing might be telling us the wrong story. This theory claims the real evidence is all about understanding where the sugar is and what that location actually means. This table is really the core of the whole diagnostic argument. It shows two totally different profiles that often get grouped together. On the left, you've got a body that's hot. It's holding on to water, and it's using the sugar in its blood probably as a coolant. But on the right, you have what this theory calls true diabetes, a body that's cold, losing weight fast, and literally dumping sugar it can't use because it's already freezing. Two opposite conditions. And that right there is the punchline. High sugar in the blood means the body is actively using it. But sugar in the urine, that means the body is actively wasting it, chucking it out because it has no purpose in a cold body. One is a tool, the other is trash. So let's follow the logic. If the real problem is a starved, cold, and failing bone marrow system, well, then the only way forward isn't to just manage the symptoms, it's to rebuild that furnace from the ground up. This completely reframes the goal of any intervention. The focus shifts away from just managing sugar levels and moves towards something much more fundamental. Giving the marrow the exact fuel it needs to generate heat, get back online, and warm the body back up to a healthy state. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the body is freezing because its furnace ran out of fuel, how in the world do you get that fire lit again? The sources we've been looking at lay out a very specific plan to do exactly that. And that is what we're going to dive into in our next explainer. So we'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. If the body's furnace truly runs on fat, could the real key to solving a crisis we've always blamed on sugar be, well, fat? Join us next time as we break down the dietary solutions this framework proposes for rebuilding the marrow and relighting that internal fire. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss it.